Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll masech the Chagigah daf Hey. We are going to begin on Hey Amud Aleph, about 8 lines from the top. Rabbi Yochanan kimatel haykra bacha. When he got to this pasuk, he would cry. The pasuk says in Iyuv, "V'tisi seini boy levaloi chino," that you insisted of me to destroy him for nothing. So Ebed Sharabo Masisin Loy Venises. If you have a servant that the master is insisted to harm him, to Kani Yeshlo, is there any help for you? So this is when Iyuv was silent by the advice of Paro. So on this situation, so he was punished, as some explain, because he was silent. So therefore, his punishment was that he received Yisurin. Okay, now on this, the Tur Ivan asked a question, but we see it wasn't Bechinam. What do you mean it was Bechinam? He did something wrong. So he explains that his punishment didn't fit the crime. So even though he may have done something wrong, but for what he did wrong, he shouldn't have deserved such a harsh punishment. Therefore, it's considered to be Bechinam. Yochanan kimato haykra bachi used to cry when the pasuk says, "Hein b'kedusha v'lo yamin." Among the holy ones, Hashem has no trust. So yamin, b'man yamin. If he doesn't have trust in them, then who in fact will he have any trust for? Clearly, no one. So Yamachada, one day, Habi Ka'azil Ba'urch, he was on the road. Chazilahu Gabi saw a person, the Habi Mankitani, he was gathering up figs. Shavik Hanach the Matu, Vishakal Hanach the Lo Matu. So he took the figs that were ripe and he left the ones that were not ripe. So he said, understand, why don't you take the ones which are better? So I'm going on a trip, and Hani Natran, Vahani Lo Natran. These are going to keep and these are not going to keep. So if I take the ones that are ready, it's like buying green bananas. You want to think ahead, because otherwise, by the time in the middle of the trip, these fruits are going to already be not good, and therefore I'm going to take only the ones that are not ready yet. So Omer Hainu Dechsiv Hein B'Kedusha V'Yamin. That must be what it means that Hashem doesn't have Amunah on those Kedushim. It just means perhaps that Hashem, like those ripe figs, Hashem takes them not so that they won't spoil later on in life. So therefore, that's the idea. Hashem will maybe take these tzaddikim now so they don't end up doing something wrong later. Eini b'hahu talmida dehavi yeshvised Rabbi al-Chazandri of Shachav adazuter. So we find that this person died when he was young. V'omer iboy haim merabanan havichai. He said if he wanted among these rabbanan, then he would have lived. In other words, perhaps the reason why he was punished, says Rashi, if he would have gone the proper path, he would have lived, but maybe not. Maybe this young man was actually a Kaddish, and the reason why Hashem took him was before he would sin. This was someone who rebelled against his teacher. Says Rashi, he recognized he was not among the Kedoshim. Therefore, this person, it's better that he should have died now and not have a long life, but not because he was a Kaddish. Rabbi Yochanan kimatilahai kra habi kra bachi. So again, Rabbi Yochanan would cry when he got to this pasuk in Malachi. It says, "The kirveisi aleichem lemishvat," that I will call out to them in justice. V'yisa'ein, I'll be a witness. Mimaher b'machshafim umin naafim, to be able to be swift regarding those engaged in witchcraft and those who are engaged in lewd behavior. V'shvoyim l'shaker, those who falsely lie. Someone who withholds wages. So Emet Sharabo Mikir if you have a servant whose master is going to be quick to judge him for his wrongdoings, Takana Yeshlo. So there's not much of a takana for this individual, because it's very easy that a person can make a mistake, and now that he's going to be punished, and quickly punished, is very problematic. Woe to us that they weigh the light sins as the strong ones. Anyone who misjudges the din of a ger, a stranger, a convert, it's you're playing with fire, because it's like you're doing this against Hashem. Now, the reason why it said kalska chamuros is someone who doesn't pay back their pay wages on time, which is an important thing to do, but it's comparable, as it said in the same pasuk, is someone who is engaged in adultery or witchcraft. So we see that we're in a lot of trouble, because Hashem is going to even be exacting punishment, even kalos, even small iniquities. Now, Shenamar, the pasuk says, ger, when a person misjudges a ger, umeti ksiv, which is referencing to harming Hashem, and Hashem is going to exact punishment on that individual. Omer Rav Chanina bar Papa, kol oised davar, anyone who does something wrong, however, mischaret by, you have charata, you regret it, moichon miyad, Hashem will forgive that individual. Shnemar v'li yareini, that he did not fear me. Ha yareini moichon lahem. All you have to do is have yiras Hashem, and then Hashem will accept your tshuva immediately. Fine. Hayireni moichel lahem yad. Rabbi Yochanan kimato haykra bachi, who would cry, ki es kol maaseh Elokim yavi b'mishpat. All the actions of Hashem will bring to justice. Al kol ne'elam, on all that which is hidden. So evet sharabah shaykel shkagos kizdainais tekani yeshlo. So a person is being judged, even the shaygeg kamezid. Says Rashi, v'yaf al hanelamois, even that which is hidden from us, shasa shaygiku, maybe mishpat. Hashem's going to judge us also on the shaygig. So my al kol, what does that mean, al kol? Says Rashi, I feel davar mu'et b'mash, even a small thing. So what does it mean, al kol nelam? So Amarav zeh ha'hoyreg kina b'fnei chaveroi v'nimos. If a person will kill lice in front of his friend, and that v'nimos, but it makes your friend grossed out by your behavior, so that in itself you're also going to be punished. Shmuel Omer, zeh harak b'fnei chaveroi v'nimos. A person who is repulsed by his friend who spits in front of him, so this also Hashem is going to judge you for it. So you have to be very careful how you act, and in a proper way. I'm So when we said it was hidden, it's like it was hidden like you didn't even realize that you made a mistake. So ma'im toivim ra. So Amr de Rabbi Yanai zeh hanoisen tzedakah ani b'parhesia. If you give to the poor person in public charity, this is also not good. So you did good, but it's imra, it's with bad. Ki had Rabbi Yanai chazu who gav, we saw a person that kayov zuzel ani b'parhesia. He gave it to the poor person, he did it in public. Better you shouldn't give it to him at all. Instead of you giving it to him and having embarrassed him. So it's not just your actions, but you have to know how to do it in a proper way to show and to keep dignity upon that person. If you give money to a woman in private, even though you're doing it for a nice purpose, but people may suspect that you may be engaged in improper behavior with this woman. That you give improper, uncut, as Rashi she'ena menukar, menachelib. You didn't remove the fats or the gidim, such as the Gid Nasha, and it's Erev Shabbos. So what do you think is going to happen? Rashi says, here in Lasa Sarche Shabbos, she's so busy preparing for Shabbos, she's not going to prepare it properly, but it's your fault, because you shouldn't have given it to her last minute. Rava Meshager, what do you mean? But I know that Rava used to give this to his wife on Erev Shabbos. No Shani Bas Rav Chista de Kimli begaved de Bekia. When it came to Rava's wife, who was the daughter of Chista, who was obviously a great, great woman. So she was a baki. She knew how to be able to do this, and therefore no issue would take place in that situation. Rav Yochanan came out to a high crow baki who used to cry. Again, Rav Yochanan, v'haya kitim sena oiso rois rabos v'tsaros. So when it befalls upon a person all these terrible things, so evich rabba moitzel rois v'tsaros. So someone that has not just ra, bad things happen to him, it's also tsar, terrible pain as well. To kani yeshlo. So my rois v'tsaros, what is like pain and bad? Now marav rois. That the two evil things almost like contradict each other. What does that mean? Just like a wasp and a scorpion. Well, what does that mean, a wasp and a scorpion? So Rashi says like this. It says that chamimi akrava the kariri lazibura the chilufa sakanta. That what you need to do for a scorpion bite is you need to put hot on it. When it comes to a wasp, you need to put cold on it. But if you do the opposite, then you're going to actually make it worse. So therefore, the problem is that what is a remedy for the wasp is actually contradictory for the bite of the scorpion. And therefore, it's going to be tsaros. Like a tsaros is also co-wives, two women. So the same thing over here, when it comes to this terrible ra, it's going to be tsaros, like the zibur and the akrava. This is referring to someone who gives to a poor person at the time of difficulty. It says Rashi elkoi. When it said before im toivim ra, this is actually going back. You only give it to him when he's at the worst state of his life. Not before. You would able to purchase mizainos and acquire it at a cheaper price. Instead, you give it to him at the last moments of his life. Even though you did give tzedakah, but you didn't give it at the right time. So it's how you give it, and it's also when you give it. Omer Rabba Hainu Damri Inshi Zuzalala Lo Shchicha. To buy grain, which is not shchiach, can cost Lo Shchicha. L'talisa shchiach. So basically, what it's saying is based on supply and demand. Says Rashi, Liknai Satavua. To purchase grain l'tilta, l'havsid l'ibud. There's actually a third of a loss. Kach shemati v'niro liknus b'shas adchak mozin shehu toila b'tzalo. It's hanging in a basket. Kinemer mar tola tzilta. If you have flour in a basket, tol mezoni taloi bevesa kashel eniyeh. So it's like when it's hanging in a basket or hanging meats. That's something which is, or hanging bread rather. It says over there. That's kashali in yusa. That's a bad sign for poverty. So it's talking about, again, that there is the possibility of purchasing something at the wrong time and therefore ends up being more costly. Fine. Question 13. Madua in l'shloach l'isha basar shein mechutach be'erev Shabbos. So the answer is because they may not remove all the different things. They may not realize that you didn't take off all the chalev and the gid. Because his wife was an expert. Okay. Weiter. Okay, we did that. The pasuk says, "V'chara apibo b'yom hahu." That Hashem will be very upset on that day. I'll turn my face from them. Amarav Bardala Bartiv Yomi Amarav Loi Akol She'eno Behester Panim Eno Mehem. Anyone who is not part of Hester Panim, which of Hashem's hiding, then you are not among them. Kol She'enu B'Vahayil Echayil. Anyone who doesn't fall into the category of B'Hayil Echel to be consumed, Einoi Mehem, says Rashi, Mizer Yisrael. You're not from Klal Yisrael. The pasuk says, Vasiroisi Ponai Mehem. Right? So therefore, only when we see a person who's not answered or similar to this level of Hester Panim, that's a raya that they're part of Klal Yisrael. The Miri says, of course, some of Yisrael could have fortune and be answered. It is a musar to tell us that whatever happens to us. So the point is that not Lav Dafka are we going to necessarily be answered because of Hester Panim. Okay. Hey, Amid Beis. Amrulei Rabbanon Rava. Mar loy behester panim isei v'loy b'mahayil echel isei. But not everyone again falls in this category. That sometimes Hashem does answer us. So Amrulei miadisu kama mishardana b'tzina. Do you know how many times it was sent in private to Beishvar Malka that feel hachi ya'iv be Rabbanon enayu? Basically, there were so many times that we had to go to Shavar Malka in order to be able to hopefully not be harmed. Afil hachi yoiv be Rabbanan enayu. They cast their eyes upon him. Adahachi shader Rabbi Shavar Malka v'gavruhu. And then all of a sudden the Shavar Malka came and plundered Rava. So he actually was given this like ayin hara. They're like, look at you, right? He said to Rava, but Mar, you don't have Hester upon him. Everything works out for you. Because what are you talking about? Things aren't so great. So because of the ayin hara, unfortunately, he lost a lot of his wealth. Amar Haided Asanya, Amar Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Kol Makam Shenasnu Chachamim Minehem. Whenever you have your someone given like an ayin hara, Obamisa o oini. Either it's the tragedy of death will fall upon you, or poverty and anis choshev kames. Then Hashem will hide His face on this day. Amar Rabba, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Afapi, Shesirarti Panai Mehem V'chaloyim Adabrabo. Even though I'm going to hide from them, I will still speak to them in a dream. Says Rashi, because pasuk is Bayomahu, Kadai B'Yom V'Layla. It's only Hashem will give Hester upon him during the day, but not at night. Rav Yosef Omer Yada Natuya Aleinu, that His hand is stretched out to us. Shnemar V'Tzel Yadai Kesisicha, that the shade of my hand I've covered you. Yeshua ben Chananya Habikoi Bekesar. So Yeshua ben Chananya was at the Caesar. Achvilahu Afrikusa. So there was this person who was an Apikoros, or some say he was a min, and some actually say is mitalmid of Yeshu. This is she'enoi mamidim l'divrei chachamim zal. So there's different opinions exactly. Perhaps this is, according to some versions, a hint to Yeshu. So where Yeshua ben Chananya went to the Caesar, so again he showed him through a gesture, this Apikoros, Amma de Hadrinuhu, you're from a nation that Mare, the master, turned away. He turned his face from you. So he said back that his hand is still stretched out toward us. So it makes sense why this perhaps could be Yeshu, is because this is obviously the notion that Judaism is no longer relevant because Hashem has turned away from us. Yeshua, my achvilach, what exactly were you like pointing? What gesture? So ma dehadrinu maril apimine, regarding the fact that our master has turned away from us. And I replied to him, Yada Netuyalenu. So Lahu Mina my achviasle. What exactly was this gesture? Amad dehadrinu mare mine my achvilach lo yadana. So he said, I don't know. So Amr Gavradul Yadai, my machvule, this person who doesn't know these gestures, b'mochlik yachvi kamei malka, he's going to basically stand in front of the king. So Avkua v'katlu. So the Caesar went out and killed him. Look at Rashi, Apikoros, Sheinu ma'aminim l'divrei Razal kigun sedukim. Okay. So again, the Caesar said, what was he saying? What was he saying? So Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya understood both these gestures, but the other person, the Apikoros, didn't. So he said, you're standing over here, you don't know what's going on, I'm going to kill you. Kikon nichanashed Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, Armulei Rabbanan, mighty havi alon b'Apikoroson. What will happen to us from these apikorsin, because if you're no longer here to defend us against them, what will be? That it'll be removed the eitzah from your children, and their chachma will be removed. So even though we will lose the wisdom, so to also vanish their knowledge as well. And I'll travel with you, and I'll go with you. So it's only when they're together. So when we are on a high academic level, so too are they. But if we're not, then they're not. So therefore, you don't have to worry, even in Rabbi Shimon Hananiah's passing, that they're not going to have these confrontations. Rabbi Eloi Havitzalach B'darga, so he was going on a ladder up the stairs of the Bei Rabba Bar Shila, and his house. Shalmili Nuka, he heard a kid. The Havi Kakari is reading the following pasuk: Ki hine yoitzer harim, that he is the one who forms the mountains. Uvori ruach, he creates the winds. Umagilu adam masicha, and he tells people what his conversations were. So Omer Eved Sharabu Magidloi Masicha Takana Yeshloi. So exactly what are we supposed to do? That Hashem knows everything that we're doing. So my Masichai, what exactly is this conversation that Hashem knows that we should perhaps be concerned about? Omer Afil Sicha Yiserish Bein Ishel Ishto Magidin Lo Adam B'Shas Misa. Even the extra conversation that a man has with his wife will be declared to him at the time of his death. So, therefore, a person needs to be careful of what is said. Even when you speak to your wife, you have to be extremely, extremely careful not to speak extra words. Sichi Yisera, which means sometimes because you have a close relationship with someone, you may end up speaking not in the right way, and therefore you're going to be held accountable even the way that you speak to your wife. You have to be very careful. There was a time that Kahana was underneath a bed, the Rav, that he was engaged in seemingly inappropriate conversation, and he had relations with his wife. Summer the way that you act is as though you've never had relations before. The way that you're acting, it seems very peculiar. Somebody, Kahana, Puk, get out. This is not proper what you're doing. In order to be able to find favor with my wife and for her to be able to have a proper feelings toward me and having tashmish, there's nothing wrong with having it's not excessive conversation, it's appropriate conversation. However, if it's not necessary, so then sometimes excessive conversation will actually be a negative. Says Rashi, Kishloi Toyim Tavshila, Sharav Echel, it's like you're starving to eat. Klamer Misavel Tashmish, you have a taiva for tashmish. So the fact that you show a desire to your wife is not necessarily a bad thing if it's litzarch ritzuye, if it's a way to be able to make her also feel a emotional bond and connection. V'imlo tishma'u b'mis tarim, that if you do not hear to that which is in hiding, tevacha nafshi nimnei give, that my soul cry out due to pride. Omer Rav Shmuel bar Ine mishmei derav makom yeshlo l'chadosh baruch hu. There's a place to Hashem, umistarim shmo, and literally hidden is its name. My mipnei gavo, what does it mean? Because of pride. Amar Shmuel bar Yitzchak mipnei gavasan shel Yisrael shenitla mehem v'nisla v'kachavim. Because of the pride of Klal Yisrael, it's taken from them and it's given instead to the Oiv Kachavim. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Omer mipnei gavasol shel malchus shemayim, that used to be this close connection that was taken away. It sounds like Hashem's crying. Doesn't Hashem cry? There's no grief. So Hashem represents majesty and glory, not crying and grief. One is referring to the inner chambers, and the other is referencing the outer chambers. So in the inner chambers, which is the Bati Gavoy. So there is crying. However, the Bati Baroi, in the outer, there is no crying. So Babati Baroi Lo, you're saying that Hashem doesn't cry in these outer chambers. It says there's crying and eulogy, and there's rendering of garments, lach or sak, and the wearing of sackcloth. So your answer, Shani Chorban Beis HaMikdash Tiafil Malchi Shalom Bachu. Everyone cried over the base of Mikdash's destruction. Shnamar Hein Arolam Sa'akoi, that it was their altar, they screamed out. That even the Malchi Shalom, they cried. So the Marsha proves this is speaking of the destruction of the base of Mikdash, since the pasuk says Bayomahu, meaning that day was set aside for sorrow. The Ein Yaakov explains that even the Malachim cried, although the Torah and the Shechina will now go back to the Shemayim for them to get more benefit. Still, since there was a lack of Kavod Shemayim, for that reason they cried. The Marsha asks, why is the second thing a reason for Hashem to cry? It should be a case of Hashem's rejoicing. So we'll see. We'll explain that Marsha soon. As it says over here, the Dama Tidme. It says he cried tears twice. The Tered Eini Dima, and was again more crying a third time. So Ki Nishma Eder Hashem, because the flock of Hashem was in captivity. So Amr Avelezer Sholosh Demois Halol Lama. Why three? Achas al Mikdash Rishon, ve'achas al Mikdash Sheni, ve'achas al Yisrael Shigol Mim Kaiman. Because of the destruction of the first and second base of Mikdash, and the fact that we were exiled, is a reason to cry. It's not because of anything, it's not just because of this, but it's because of Bittul Torah. They were exiled, because we're in captivity, which sounds like Golus. Our answer is Kivan Shigol Yisrael Mim Kaiman. Once we're exiled from our place and we're moving all over the place, Ein Lecha Bittul Torah Gadol Mizeh. There's no greater Bittul Torah than that. The fact that we had to move around and we're not able to sit down and to be able to just remain focused, but by being in Golus, that created the highest level of Bittul Torah. Tanabana. Shlosh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Boichlin. For three, Hashem cries. B'chol Yom, every day. Al She'ef Shalasik B'Torah Beinu Isaac. Someone that has the ability to do something and they don't, because it's such a sad loss that they didn't reach their potential. Someone that really has very minimal time to be able to do it, but nonetheless they still do. So Hashem is so proud of their efforts. Parnes hamizgoya tzibor, and a leader who's haughty regarding the tzibor. Rabbi Havi Naked Sefer Kinois, when he got to the book of Kinois, v'kakari begava ki mata lahai psuka. When he got to this pasuk, Hishlich Mishmaim Aretz, that Hashem sent down from the heavens to the earth, Nafal Min Yada. So it fell from the sefer fell from his hands. Omri said, Me'igra Rom Labira, from all the way from the roof to the bottomless pit, a mikta is its depth. Rabbi Rav Chia Havi Shakal V'Elazar B'Orch, they were on the road. Kimatalahu Maso, when they got to a city, Omer Ikasim Rabbanan Hacha, is there any young Talmid Chacham in the city? Nezol in the Kabul Ape, so we can visit him. So Ikasim Rabbanan Hacha, Umori Naimhu, he lightens up the eyes. Omer Le Rav Chia, Le Rabbi Tiv At, you sit, Lo Tazalzel B'Nesir Secha. I do not want to be Mezalzel your Nesius, that you're going to start walking around. So Rav Chia said to Rabbi, you're the Nasi, so Ezel and I'll go, I'll go and visit him. So Takve Ba'azel Bahadeh. So Rabbi took hold of him and he went with him. Rabbi said, No, I'm not staying here. I'm going to go with you. Kihavi Mifteri, meaning when they left, Armahu, he said, Atem, he kabaltim panim hanirim ve'enu royin. You were Makabal, someone that sees and cannot be seen. So tizku akabel panim haroyim ve'enu nirin. You should be makabel the pnei shechina that can see but cannot be seen. So obviously we see from here that we're talking about a person that couldn't see. So Amalei said, Eicho hashta, had I listened to you, minasin mahay birchasa, I would have been held back from this bracha. So Rabbi said, I'm so glad that it did not allow my honor to get the best of me. So that because I'm a nasi, I'm glad I went and we see the great bracha. So Amalei said, Maman Shmielach, where did you hear that great bracha from? So the Surah Rabbanan said, Mepirkad Rav Yaakov Shmiel. I heard from him. The Rav Yaakov Ishkvar Chitoi Habi Makabel Ape the Rabbi Kol Yomi. He used to always go and visit his Rebbe. Ki Kosh, when Rav Yaakov was sick or it was hard for him, Armelunit Star Mar said, don't go, don't yachal mar. It's too hard. So Amalei Mizutter, is it small? Meinach Sibahu Barabana Bechi Oid Lenetzach, that he'll be eternal. Yura hashachas, don't see the destruction. Kira chachamim mamusu, that the chachamim will see at their death. Umahoroy chachamim b'misasin yichya, madach when it's chachamim sees b'misasin, even at his death, that person is going to be granted life. B'chayin al achas kama v'kama, so he's going to certainly be given life. So Rav Idi, avud Rav Yankov bar Idi havi ragel. The Havi Ozel Talasi Yarchi Beorcha. He used to go on the road 3 months. The Chad Yoima Bebe Rav. He would go to a study hall one day. Vavi Kol Rabbanan Bar Be Rav the Chad Yoima. They used to call him, he's the 1 day rabbi. So Cholosh Daite, he felt bad. Kari Nafshi Schaikuriehu, that people are scoffing me. Armali Rav Yochanan B'matusiminach. We beg you. Lo ta'anish luhu rabbanan. Don't punish the rabbanan. Navig Rav Yochanan b'midrash v'darsh v'oisi yoim yirushun. And on every single day you'll seek me out. V'das darchi yichei pasun. And the knowledge of my ways I want to know. V'chi b'yom darshan oiso v'layl ein darshan oiso. What does it mean? It says you seek Hashem out during the day. What do you mean only during the day, at night, not at night? Elor melcha. Kol oisi b'Torah fil yom echad b'shana. Even if you learn Torah just 1 day a year, you get the credit like you learned the entire year. So therefore, you shouldn't feel bad if all you're able to do is this one thing. One is better than nothing, and therefore, if you do at least 1 day, it's like you did it the entire year. And therefore, even though of course it would be better to do it every single day, but if all you are capable of doing is just that 1 day, so then Hashem says, you know what? I'm going to give this person all the credit. So too, when a person who learns Torah, it's explained that even though they go to sleep and they eat, but the only reason why they're sleeping and eating is so that they could have the proper energy to be able to learn Torah. So Hashem gives them credit also while they're sleeping as they're learning Torah, because Hashem says if that individual would have been able to just stay up all night and not need to sleep, he would be learning Torah then. So therefore, the fact that he's human and he needs that sleep, he's not going to lose out. So when it comes to punishments, that the days in which you spied the land, they didn't spy the land for 40 years. It was only for 40 days. If you do even one thing wrong, one sin wrong a year, Hashem views it as though you sinned the entire year. Now, some people explain there was actually a bracha. The fact that Hashem did Yom Lashana, day to a year, was actually not a punishment, because their punishment was that they had to stay in the wilderness, and they were going to die in the wilderness, and they're not going to go to Israel. So if it would be for 40 days, that means they all would have died after 40 days. The fact is that Hashem made it for 40 years, so this way they were able to actually live long lives, or decent amount of lives, of years, and without having to die at a very, very premature age. We'll stop here. Let's see just a couple questions. Fine. Question 6. V'dama tidme v'terd ene dima sholosh demois halol lama. Why does it say that they cried 3 times? How is it that they cried for 3 tears? So one of the pshatim is on the first base of Mikdash, the second base of Mikdash, and the third reason why they cried was because of Golus or because of Bittul Torah. Okay. Question TA 23. Elohim shloisha shakadosh baruch hu boichleim b'chol yom. These are the people that Hashem cries for every single day. So someone that is able to learn Torah but doesn't, someone who really it's difficult for them, but they still do, and also a parnes who is haughty over the tzibor. So those three are the individuals that Hashem cries for all the time. So let me just find this. Kadosh Baruch Hu boichalim b'chol yoim. Al efshil asik b'torah ve'enu oisik. Al she'i efshil asik b'torah ve'oisik ve'al parnes hamizgoya al tzibor. That was TA 23. TA 23. Okay, and TB 24. Al elu shloisha Kadosh Baruch Hu boichalim b'chol yoim. Is that the exact same question? Exact same question, Adkan.